What's up, everyone? Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Really excited today to be back with another client interview for you guys. And today we have Aditya on with us. Excited for this interview because Aditya is actually one of our MBA clients, which, we obviously work with a lot of college students, and then we also work with some MBA students as well. But I think it's always good to, sometimes we talk to MBA students and they want to hear the perspectives of other MBA students that have gone through the process. And so I just want to get him to come on here and talk to you guys today. He actually went through two recruiting cycles, recruiting for both a summer associate internship as well as for a full-time associate position. I was able to do both very successfully. And so hopefully he'll be able to, just talk about his experience and his journey and share some insights that'll be able to help you in your own recruiting process as well. So with that said, Aditya, I want to thank you, first of all, for taking the time to be here with us today. And if you could
Absolutely.
just maybe start things off by introducing yourself real quick and giving us like a quick down low on your background and your profile, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Aditya Vagish. I grew up in Michigan. I was actually pre-med in undergrad. So I attended the University of Michigan. I studied neuroscience and cognitive science, and I spent 2 years working in the microbiology research lab.
Hmm.
And after undergrad, I actually made a pivot into finance. The reason for that was because during my time in the research lab, our supplies came from Medline. And in 2021, Medline went through a huge sponsor-backed acquisition. And I remember my PI telling me about that acquisition, saying that our supplies were likely to be delayed now because of the M&A transaction. That got me interested in M&A in the space as a whole. And I just saw it as a way to make broad impact on patient outcomes on a larger scale than I could as a primary care provider.
Hmm.
So after I graduated, I started working at a lower middle market M&A advisory firm called Acquisition Partners Group. And then I worked with the CEO of that firm to co-found ExitWise, which is a larger, more expanded version of that original firm. And
Hmm.
we focused in the lower middle market. It was based out of Michigan, so mostly SaaS and industrial deals just due to the location, but it was industry agnostic. And it was a great experience for me. It made me realize that I wanted to do investment banking, but I wanted to work on larger deals and I wanted to focus specifically on the healthcare space. So that's what drove me to get my MBA at Booth, and I concentrated in finance and healthcare. And for the internship recruiting cycle, I ended up doing my summer internship at a middle market healthcare services firm called Kane Brothers. And
Hmm.
I think it was a great experience. I learned a lot there. But ultimately, I realized that I wanted to focus on the biopharmaceutical industry and I wanted to work on larger deals to make that broad-based impact on patient outcomes. So I ended up re-recruiting at the end of the summer and just accepted an offer to join Guggenheim in New York.
That's awesome, man. That's quite the journey, honestly. And I think
Mhm.
you first joined Wall Street Mastermind back in like at the very end of 2022, I want to say, right? So
Yeah, I think it was yeah, right at the end of 2022. I think I had spoken with you right after I graduated. I found the program through an ad on Instagram, I think, and
uh,
I think the person I talked to had mentioned that I needed to get into an MBA program, which was my plan. And once I had the Booth acceptance, I was able to start Wall Street Mastermind as well.
gotcha. Okay, very cool. So um, what how did you make that pivot from like pre-med straight into finance after graduating? Because I think people will find that to be pretty interesting. Most people that are able to start in banking after undergrad, usually they've
Mhm.
been doing like finance internships and stuff like that there the whole time in undergrad. But it sounds like you probably were mostly doing pre-med stuff, right?
Yeah,
So how were you
definitely.
able to kind of like successfully make that pivot? Even though it was like a smaller, lower middle market bank, like you said, but still you got your foot in the door. Like, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So this was during the summer right after I graduated. I think one thing that helped me was during my final semester of college, I was working with InfoSight Consulting, which is a technology consulting firm based out of London, actually founded by my uncle. And him and my father were working on establishing a division in America. I found it to be very interesting. I always had an interest in business. I was in a few clubs at Ross, the business school at Michigan.
Mm.
So I helped out with that. I was able to work with some of the teams. I kind of coached a team on communicating with American clients since they were used to dealing with the Asia Pacific section. So I had a bit of consulting business-esque experience on my resume there. And then after that, I just really did a lot of research on finance, on investment banking, the industry as a whole. One thing I did was I memorized the whole M&A process, made sure I could speak to it intelligibly to, someone who worked in the industry. And I applied broadly to try to get a finance internship of any kind. I think I was fortunate to be able to get one within M&A. And this company was the CEO is also a Ross MBA grad, and he's a serial entrepreneur. This is his fifth business venture. And I think what he was looking for specifically was someone who had done a difficult major at a reputable institution. So we both went to Michigan. That was good. He liked that I did neuroscience, and then I could speak to that consulting experience I had, and just the knowledge I'd gathered about M&A through research, I think was what motivated him to take a chance on me there. And it
Mm.
was like a role that was 50% deal work, M&A advisory, and 50% entrepreneurial, right? So that's like broadly applicable to any background. So I think through
Yep.
that, that's how I was able to get my foot in the door.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. Um, and obviously, when you came to us, you were, already working for this guy and working in, lower, technically lower middle market or maybe regional boutique IB, whatever you want to call it. And then you were also planning on going and getting your MBA, or I guess that maybe that came out of your conversation with us. But
Mhm.
like, what made you decide to like work with Wall Street Mastermind at that point? Because some people might wonder, like, oh, well, you already, got into like lower middle market banking on your own. Like, why
Mhm.
not just, even though you're trying to move up to a bigger bank, like, why not just try to do that on your own as well? Or why not try to do that like just through your MBA program, for example, right?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on kind of what the thought process was there?
Yeah, definitely. I think the thought process was like Wall Street Mastermind was something I had found before I, got into this role and before I started at Booth as well. So it's something that was always on my mind. And I think I got on a call with somebody at that point as well. And I think what really appealed to me was the video instructionals on the behaviorals and technicals. I think me personally, I learn best through video instruction. And I just thought it would be a really valuable resource. Now at this point, I was in lower middle market investment banking, but the specific nature of my company, I wasn't doing a lot of financial modeling. I didn't have a lot of exposure to that technical side, right? And I thought that, once I started Booth, I was going to go through Booth's recruiting cycle, and they have a very, it's an incredible process. They really help you out. But I realized that I would be competing with, MBA candidates that had 5, 10 years of experience. I was still freshly out of undergrad. A lot of these people have studied finance before. So I thought that Wall Street Mastermind would just help me get that edge and be able to, stay competitive the rest of the MBA class.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like I think we've seen kind of two types of MBA candidates. Some of them think like, well, I'm already, paying all this money to go get an MBA and there's career services. They're supposed to help me get these jobs. And so like I'm just gonna do that and I'm not gonna I don't shouldn't need to, pay for anything else on top of that. Right.
Mhm.
And then there's like the second group, which I think maybe you resonate with a bit more, which is, hey, if I'm investing all this money to go get an MBA and also not just money, but
Yeah.
like 2 years of my time, 2 years of not working, foregoing like salary if it's a full-time MBA. There's
Mhm.
just a huge opportunity cost of getting this degree. And even if you're at a top program like a Booth or, I mean, first of all, you have to be at a top program at the MBA level
Yeah.
if you want to work for a reputable bank. Because like the bulge bracket, elite boutiques, even the middle market banks, they just don't hire MBA level candidates from no-name schools, right? It's not like at
Exactly.
the undergrad
Yeah.
level where they might still hire some people from non-target schools. At the MBA level, you have to be at a target school program, which I would say
Mhm.
for most people is like ideally a top 10 program, but minimum probably like top 20, I think would still be good enough, right?
Yeah.
But even then, like if you're in a top 10, top 20 program, typically, like if you look at mergers and acquisitions, which is, obviously the most well-read blog site for people that want to get into banking, they
Yeah.
talk about this, which is the number of MBA candidates who want to get into banking from these top programs. Out of all those candidates, probably 35 to 40% of them actually get at least one offer, right? Which
Mhm.
means like 65 to, or I guess 60 to 65% of the people, call it 2 out of 3 people, don't actually end up with an offer, right?
Yeah.
What you think about it is actually like the odds are better than usual if you didn't get MBA, but still not like the best considering
Yeah.
how much you're
Exactly.
investing, which is to your point, like, even though you now have a much better shot with the Booth MBA, you're still competing against a bunch of other really qualified people who also have
Mhm.
that Booth MBA, who also have the career services, who also have like you're still on a if anything at best a level playing field with those guys, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, what else? What other competitive advantage can you get that maybe your other classmates don't have? Because if 1 out of 3 people are getting at least one offer, and out of that, I think he said it's 10 to 15% of the candidates that actually get their top choice offer. So that's the other thing is like
Mhm.
not just getting in, but also getting the best offer you could possibly get, right?
Yeah.
So because
Exactly.
there's a big difference there in terms of like how good of offer you get. So obviously, I'm biased, but I agree with your mentality because if you're already investing that much to make
Mhm.
this career change, it's probably smart to just like do everything you can to make sure that that happens. Because the worst thing that happens is you invest all that time and all that money and you get this MBA and then you fail at switching careers. And then now you have
Yeah.
to fall back on something else that wasn't really what you went to the MBA for in the first place. Right. So like
Yeah.
the risk reward is kind of like what you have to evaluate there. Right.
Yeah.
So I guess that leads me to the next question then, which is like, um, obviously then you came into Wall Street Mastermind and then like, that was geez, that was like almost 2 years ago at this point, right?
Yeah. 3 years
And
ago.
then you've gone through 2 recruiting cycles now. You now have an offer at Guggenheim. Um, between when you first joined to now, like, what were some of the things that you did inside of Wall Street Mastermind that you felt like really made a big difference for you, or like really moved the needle? And specifically, like things that made you feel like, hey, this is like an additional competitive advantage I would not have had I
Mhm.
not done this. Like
Yeah.
versus kind of like what my classmates are already doing. Can you kind of like talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that from the technical perspective, outside of Wall Street Mastermind, the best resource that I had were the Breaking into Wall Street Advanced guides. So there's about 7 guides,
Yep.
7 PDFs, about 100 pages each. I'm sure you're familiar with them. I think they go really in depth into the technical concepts, and they're based around understanding rather than memorization, which is extremely important when you have super days at the elite boutiques like an Evercore. They'll give you a few questions to make sure you know what you're talking about, and
Yep.
then they like to have fun with it, and they start trying to ask you stuff that you don't know the answer to, right? Just to see how you think. So
Yep.
conceptual understanding is really important. I don't think it can be understated. And I think the advanced guides were a great way to really grasp the concepts behind the technicals. And then I think the other thing that I learned throughout my internship process, and really I learned this more during full-time recruiting, and it's something I wish I had focused more on during internship recruiting, is I targeted biopharmaceuticals, but whatever industry you're in, being able to speak to the trends in the industry and not just I read a headline on Wall Street Journal and I know like one sentence about what's happening, but knowing companies in the space, knowing the products of those companies, having a good idea of I'm following this company. It's a great acquisition target for a Novo, for a Eli Lilly in the pharmaceutical space. I think having that knowledge, having really in-depth knowledge of trends, it's a game changer. I think it really sets you apart from other candidates,
Yeah.
especially at the MBA level. I think, when you're going out of undergrad, you haven't worked before. You're really just working with the same technicals, and excelling on those is great for you. But
Yeah.
when they're looking to hire an MBA associate, really the value comes from the industry expertise that the MBA associate can bring.
Yeah.
So if you've worked in an industry and you're really familiar, you might already have that. But if you haven't, that's something you definitely need to attain in order to be competitive in the recruiting cycle.
Yeah. Gotcha. So how would you say like what you learned in Wall Street Mastermind, like how did it prepare you to do those things, I guess?
Yeah,
Um,
I think in Wall Street Mastermind, I mean, you have videos that kind of walk through how to answer those questions. So tell me about a company, tell me about a deal, how to research trends. So I think those are great resources that kind of tell you exactly how these questions should be answered, and even in most cases where to find the information to answer those questions. So I think that was extremely helpful. And I think the way I utilized Wall Street Mastermind was in kind of the period, the month that's occurring right now before info sessions kick off and the recruiting cycle begins. That's when I took the time to go through all of the videos, all the technical, behavioral, any video that was applicable to me. And by the time we started technicals, Boot's a bit different. School technically protects us. We're not supposed to be asked technicals during coffee chats.
mm,
That being said, bankers don't always listen, right? So having gone through these videos and having a good understanding already really helped me get through the technicals in my coffee chats. And I didn't even start the advanced guides until Christmas break, which is like the 2 weeks before first round interviews start for New York.
mm. Gotcha. Okay, so you started with kind of the Wall Street Mastermind
Mhm.
curriculum first, just to kind of because like obviously the recruiting timeline for the summer associate internship happens during like the first semester of your first year, and
Yep.
so you basically started going through our curriculum before you started first semester, so that as soon as you step foot on campus, you can just like hit the ground running, whether it's for the coffee chats or if you're getting grilled by bankers, like you were basically already prepared, and then
Yep.
you later study like the more advanced stuff, was like supplemented with outside resources and things like that after like towards the end of the semester, close to like, and that was like around, I guess, the time when interviews are happening and things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. That was my timeline.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Um, and what like what would you say is, the difference between kind of the help that you were able to get from inside of Wall Street Mastermind versus say like just what you had available through, I don't know, like on-campus resources or career services? Like,
Mhm.
is there any difference there, or and if so, like what would you say those are?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest advantages of Wall Street Mastermind and why one of the reasons why I initially enrolled in the course is just that it's a chance to be a part of a giant network of investment banking professionals, and the success rate is so high. You get access to a brand new network. It's like one of the main reasons you go to business school, to get access to the Booth network. Now you have another complete network of a lot of different undergrads and business schools as well. So that was very helpful. And in terms of the difference in resources, I think that's very MBA dependent. So Booth has the investment banking group, and that group, you're divided. You get a mentor who is technically always on call to answer all of your questions, right? But that's just one person working with, however many students they're mentoring. And I think where Wall
Mm.
Street Mastermind was really helpful for me is actually both nights for full time and internship recruiting right before my super day. I remember I had some technical questions that I needed answering, and I was able to just go into the coaching channel, put the questions in, and you and I think it was Daniel were just able to answer them really quickly. And I guess that immediate feedback and availability was really helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that is definitely something that we pride ourselves on. Is like, every person that comes in, it's not even just one coach, but we put, usually upwards of four, minimum four, if not more coaches in the channel to make sure that, sometimes things happen very quickly and you need a very quick turnaround and you need a very fast response. And maybe you have an interview coming up real soon and you're doing some last minute cramming, or I don't
Yeah.
know, banker emails you and you need to respond right away. And you might not have time to, go wait in line or schedule an appointment or whatever to get someone to help you. And so
Mhm.
that's that's definitely, like a lot of times time is of the essence, right? And
Yeah.
then it could end up making the difference between you getting the offer versus not. So that's a great point. I guess
Absolutely.
one last question that I have for you,
Mhm.
uh, to just kind of wrap up this interview. I always like to end on this question, which is, now that you've gone through this entire process,
Yeah.
both the summer associate process and the full-time process, which, I think gives you a unique perspective because there's a lot of MBA candidates that only go through maybe the summer process, but not the full-time, right? But you've done both.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, what would be your best piece of advice for maybe like incoming MBA students who are, getting an MBA for the purpose of being able to switch careers into banking from obviously some other field.
Yeah.
Uh, is there something that maybe you learned yourself along the way, like you just figured it out, or maybe a piece of advice that someone else gave you that
Mhm.
really helped you tremendously or made a big difference for you that you wish you had known earlier, or you wish someone had told you back then or back when you were
Yeah.
first starting? Like, is there anything like that that you can kind of like pass down to other people?
Absolutely. And this is something, so I'm actually the one of the co-chairs of the banking group right now, and I've been giving this advice out. And I would say the biggest thing is that you need to understand that you really only have one shot at recruiting, at getting the offer you want or getting into banking at all, right? So I can't stress enough the importance of preparing early, really taking the time to go above and beyond the general, 400 questions that everyone is studying. Be aware of the fact that everyone is studying the same things that you're studying.
Mm,
So whatever you can do extra in addition to that, like I mentioned, looking at the market, looking at companies, knowing deals very well, that's what really sets you apart from other candidates. And given the fact that you only have one shot, it's definitely worth investing as much time, as much of your resources as possible to make it happen.
yeah, that's a really good point because I guess, for people that are maybe trying to break in at the undergrad level,
Mhm.
technically, if you don't get in, you can always work a little bit, go back, get an MBA, try again.
Exactly.
But
Yeah,
for people who are going in as an MBA, like this is literally kind of the last on ramp into like a career in investment banking. Like if you don't get in as an associate, there's no getting in as a VP or director or a managing director later on. Like you have to be
exactly.
kind of promoted up to that. And so it really is um, the last shot effectively. And you
Mhm.
have to have like I would say like back against the wall, like all in mentality. And I think the point you
Yeah.
brought up is really good, which is like for the most part, everyone at these top MBA programs are all doing the same things. They're all studying the same guys. They're all
Mhm.
using career services. And then so figuring out like what competitive advantage, what additional things you can do outside of just like the standard things that everyone's doing to give
Mhm.
yourself an additional competitive advantage that other people don't have, so that you can end up as like basically the 1 out of 3 people who actually do get at least one offer, right? Or
Yeah.
ideally, even like the 1 out of 8 or 9 people who end up getting their top choice offer and not just like any offer,
Yeah.
right? And so that's kind of like the way you think about it. And um, as long as you get at least one offer, then I would say like the ROI on your MBA degree is going to be
Mhm.
tremendous, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But if you don't, then like, you might still get an ROI, but it will probably be much lower, right? Because your
Yes.
career earnings is going to be significantly less if you break into banking versus if you don't, right? So,
Yeah, exactly.
what are associates making nowadays? Like first year associate right out of business school, like including bonus. I mean, you're probably making a good what 250, 300, probably.
I would say at the bulge bracket level, that's about right, and elite boutiques would be higher.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's pretty amazing, right? Because I think like for non-banking, like if you, I don't know, if you exit to other careers out of an MBA, you're probably looking at, I don't know, less than 200, right?
Yeah,
Probably the
definitely.
average, right? So you can do the math and you can extrapolate from there. That's just year one, right? But obviously, like you have a very long career ahead of you. So
Mhm.
um, that gap just continues to widen over time, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by like the ROI difference can be really, really huge. So anyway, I think that's really, really great advice, man. And I want to thank you for sharing that with our audience. For those of you who are still with us, if you find yourself in a similar situation where maybe you're about to start your MBA, you are planning on doing that just for the sake of switching careers into banking, and you want to just put your best foot forward and have as many competitive advantages as you could possibly get because you know that this is like your one shot and you want to make your best shot, then I would highly encourage you to reach out to our team. You can book a call with us by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST. So it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And we'll be happy to get on with you, talk to you about whatever your current situation is, what you feel like you need help with, what types of banks you're targeting. And based on that, we'll kind of help you map out a game plan for what we think needs to happen for you to get from where you are today to where you're trying to go. Okay. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on the call as well. So, uh, That's pretty much it, guys. That's what we have for you today. And Aditya, I want to thank you again for taking the time
Yep.
to come on here to share your story with us. And I think this was really beneficial, and you gave a lot of really good advice for people. And I want to congratulate you again on an amazing offer
Thank
from
you.
Guggenheim, and excited to see what you accomplish after you graduate and even beyond that. So
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. And until next time, all right, cheers.